Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw someone driving a car that felt a little too nice for what they probably earn? Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe, and I say this gently, maybe it was you. A brand new crossover SUV, leather seats, parking sensors, that little screen on the dashboard that does everything except pay your rent. And you're standing there thinking, how are they affording that? Well, here's the honest answer most financial channels won't give you. A lot of them aren't affording it, not really. They're financing it. They're stretching it. They're telling themselves a story about what they deserve, and somewhere between the test drive and the paperwork, a very expensive monthly commitment quietly enters their life. And the strange part? Nobody warned them. Not clearly, not with real numbers, not with the kind of honesty that makes you put the pen down and say, wait, let me think about this. That's what this video is. Not a lecture, not a list of rules, just an honest, calm look at one of the most emotionally charged financial decisions most people make, and how it quietly shapes the entire decade that follows. So let's start with a person, a realish person, someone you might recognize.
Let's start with Daniel. Daniel is 27. He lives in a mid-sized American city, let's say Columbus, Ohio. He graduated a few years ago, landed a decent job in project coordination at a logistics company, and earns about $52,000 a year before taxes. After federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, and health insurance deductions, Daniel takes home roughly $3,400 a month, maybe $3,500 on a good month. He rents a one-bedroom apartment, $1,050 a month, which is actually reasonable for Columbus. He pays for utilities, internet, his phone, another $200 or so combined. He has a student loan payment of $280 a month, and he spends maybe $350 on groceries, basic subscriptions, the occasional dinner out. Add that up. Rent, $1,050. Utilities and phone, $200. Student loans, $280. Food and basics, $350. That's $1,880 a month, before a car even enters the picture. Daniel has about $1,520 left after those core expenses. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Daniel's old car died last winter. He's been using Uber, bumming rides, and quietly feeling embarrassed about it. His job isn't public transit accessible. He genuinely needs a car. That part is real. So he walks into a dealership, and the salesperson, a very friendly, very good at their job person, shows Daniel a 2023 Honda CR-V. Clean, reliable, slightly too nice for what Daniel budgeted in his head. Sticker price? $32,000. The salesperson says, we can get you into this for about $520 a month, 60 months, just $520. And Daniel thinks, I have $1,500 left over every month. $520 is a third of that. That's manageable, right? He signs. And here is exactly where the story starts to quietly go wrong. Not dramatically, not obviously, but in the slow, compounding way that most financial mistakes actually.
Let's do the math together. Not scary math, just honest arithmetic. $520 a month over 60 months is $31,200 in payments alone. But here's what the dealership didn't say out loud. The interest rate on Daniel's loan is 7.9% because his credit score is decent but not excellent. He's 27, he hasn't built much credit history. 7.9% is actually pretty common for someone in his position. At 7.9% interest on a $32,000 loan over 5 years, Daniel will pay approximately $6,900 in interest alone. So the car that cost $32,000 on the sticker, it costs Daniel closer to $38,900 by the time he's done. But we're not done. Full coverage insurance on a newer financed vehicle in Ohio, because the lender requires full coverage, runs Daniel about $180 a month. That's not unusual. Registration and tags in Ohio, roughly $100 per year. Gas. If Daniel drives an average American 12,000 miles a year, at current prices, that's probably another $150 to $180 a month, depending on the season. Oil changes, tire rotations, basic maintenance on a new car, let's conservatively say $600 a year or $50 a month. So here's what Daniel's car actually costs him every single month. Loan payment, $520. Insurance, $180. Gas, $160. Maintenance, $50. Total, $910 a month. Now go back to Daniel's budget. He takes home $3,400. He has $1,520 left after his core living expenses. He thought the car was $520. The car is actually $910. That leaves Daniel $610 a month for everything else in his life. Clothing, haircuts, doctor visits, a birthday dinner, an unexpected parking ticket, a weekend trip to see his family, an emergency. $610. And this is a 27-year-old with a real job, no kids, no mortgage, living in a city with a relatively low cost of living. Now imagine the same situation in Chicago, or Denver, or London, or Munich. The numbers get worse, significantly worse.
Because this isn't only an American story. Let's talk about Sophie. Sophie is 29, lives in Lyon, France. She works in marketing for a mid-sized firm. She earns about 36,000 euros a year gross, which, after French social charges and income tax, leaves her with approximately 2,100 to 2,200 euros a month net. Her rent is 750 euros for a small two-bedroom she shares with a roommate, her share. Transport pass, phone, utilities, about 180 euros. Food, 300 euros. A small personal loan she's been paying off, 120 euros a month. That's 1,350 euros gone. She has roughly 800 euros left. Sophie's company moved their office outside the city. The public transit connection is inconvenient. Several colleagues have cars. She feels the pull. She starts looking at a used Peugeot 308, about 18,000 euros, 2 years old, low mileage. The dealer offers her financing, 320 euros a month over 60 months. In France, insurance on a used car for a driver under 30 typically runs 90 to 130 euros a month, depending on her history. Let's say 110 euros. Fuel for moderate city and highway use, roughly 120 euros a month. Control technique, maintenance, parking sticker, the occasional fine, another 60 euros monthly averaged out. Sophie's real car cost is 610 euros a month. She has 800 euros left after her fixed expenses. The car consumes 610 of that. She has 190 euros a month for the rest of her life. Sophie isn't irresponsible. Sophie isn't foolish. Sophie is just someone who did what most people around her do. She looked at the monthly payment, not the total cost. And she lives in a system that makes it very easy to say yes and very hard to say wait.
Here's the part I find genuinely fascinating about all of this. Daniel and Sophie aren't bad with money. They're not reckless. They're doing exactly what the world around them encouraged them to do. There's a concept in behavioral economics called payment decoupling. When you finance something, you emotionally separate the cost of the thing from the experience of having it. You no longer think, this car costs me $38,900. You think, this car costs me $520 a month. And $520 feels manageable. $520 doesn't feel like a sacrifice. $520 feels like a reasonable subscription to a better version of your daily life. But here's the quiet damage that does. It trains you to evaluate every purchase by its monthly cost rather than its total cost. And once you start thinking that way, you can technically afford almost anything, as long as someone's willing to break it into small enough pieces. There's also something else happening, something more social, more human. Cars are visible. Unlike your savings account, unlike your retirement fund, unlike the index fund you may or may not have, your car is parked outside. Your colleagues see it. Your family sees it. The people you're trying to impress in some vague, half-conscious way, they see it. And we are wired, deeply and stubbornly wired, to care about what other people see. The psychologist Robert Cialdini spent decades studying why people make the choices they do, and one of his core findings, not specific to cars but enormously relevant here, is that social proof and status signaling bypass our rational thinking almost every time. We don't just buy cars for transportation, we buy them for what we imagine they say about us, and that invisible psychological cost is never listed on the invoice.
Let's stay with Daniel for one more moment, because I want to show you something that takes just a little imagination. Daniel pays $910 a month total on his car. Let's say instead, in some parallel version of his life, Daniel buys a reliable used car for $12,000 cash. He saves for 8 months, drives a cheap temporary option, feels mildly uncomfortable, and comes out the other side with a paid-off Honda Civic. Total running costs, insurance on an older owned car, gas, maintenance, maybe $420 a month. The difference between those two Daniels? $490 a month. If the real Daniel had invested that $490 every month into a simple, boring, low-cost index fund, starting at 27, for the 5 years he would have been making car payments with an average annual return of 7%, by the time he's 32, he'd have approximately $34,500 accumulated. He would have, in essence, grown almost the entire cost of the car he didn't buy in investments, while also not being financially suffocated for half a decade. Now, I'm not here to tell you never to finance a car. I'm not here to tell you what to drive or what to value. That's not my business, and it's not the point. The point is simply this. Most people never run this comparison. They just see the monthly payment and nod. And 5 years later, they wonder why they haven't moved forward financially, why there's no savings, no cushion, no breathing room, and the car sitting in the driveway is a large part of the answer.
I want to give you a genuine framework here, not a rule handed down from some financial guru, but a simple way of thinking that financially clear-headed people tend to use naturally. The old guidance that keeps floating around says your car payment shouldn't exceed 15% of your take-home pay. Some say 10%, others say 20%. Honestly, the exact percentage matters less than what you're doing with the rest. A more useful question is this. What does the car actually cost me each month, including insurance, fuel, and maintenance? And what does that leave me with? Not just the payment, the whole number. If that whole number, when subtracted from what you take home after your fixed living expenses, leaves you with less than $400 or €400 a month in actual free cash, you're probably driving something that's too expensive for your life right now. Not forever, just right now. Because what that tight margin means in practice is no real savings, no emergency fund building, no investment, no flexibility. One medical bill, one job disruption, one unexpected repair, and you're borrowing to survive. And the irony is that the car, which was supposed to represent stability and competence, becomes the reason your financial life stays fragile. The people I've observed who tend to build wealth quietly, steadily, without drama, they almost universally make boring car decisions. They're not driving jalopies out of principle. They're just not letting the car consume the part of their income that could be doing something else. They buy what works, they keep it for a long time, and they put the rest somewhere that grows. It's not exciting, but 5 years from now, it makes a very large and very tangible difference. So, how much car can you really afford? Honestly, it depends on your take-home, your fixed costs, your other obligations, and how much margin you need to feel financially safe. There's no universal answer. But the better question, the one worth sitting with, is this. How much car am I actually paying for right now, in real total terms? And what is that money not doing for me? That's it. No formula, no guilt.
just a clearer picture. If this video made you think a little differently about that, or helped you see your own numbers more honestly, that's genuinely all I was going for. If you found it useful, consider subscribing. I put out videos like this regularly, calm, honest, without any agenda to sell you something or make you feel bad about where you are. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself.